I'm very excited about this one. Is it because of our amazing, esteemed panel of experts? Maybe. Is it the beautiful setting we're in? Quite possibly. Is it because I'm getting to host this? Yes, maybe. But actually, really, what excites me about this panel is the fact that building bridges is what this entire event's about. It's why we're all here in Cape Town over the next couple of days. It's to connect our ecosystems, find opportunities to collaborate, and really understand what everyone else is doing out there and how it might benefit us and how we might support them. So really excited that over the next kind of 50 minutes, we're going to get to highlight and understand some of these entities that are supporting the ecosystem, not just here in Cape Town, but across Pan-Africa. And so before we get into the conversations, I want to quickly allow each of my panelists to just quickly introduce themselves, their organization, just very quickly, exactly what it is you do.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this session. My name is Chong-Gil Lee, Director of the Korea Africa Foundation. As you can imagine with the name, Korea Africa Foundation is the African Regional Specialized Organization, which was established in 2018 with the mission of increase the exchange cooperation in various sectors like economic and cultural and academic fields. In my foundation, I'm in charge of Korea Africa Startup Idea Contest and Next Unicorn Incubating.
Hello to everyone who's actually in the room. I'm Tracy Austin from DIT, and to everybody who's not in the room, usually people come to DIT, which is the representation of the UK's Department for International Trade, when there's a problem around market access or when there's a need for funding. So I'm hoping that you will remember this and that you know who to find when you have a problem. But Anthony, thank you so much. Great group of people. I know it's hard to hear these kinds of things at the end of the day. But really, when we think about what DIT is doing in terms of trade, we're thinking about what investment is doing, what expansion, what M&A is doing on the continent. And that means that there's a whole value chain of financial services. So I look after the financial services portfolio, and a lot of my conversation, support, tools, guideline, and help will be around that point of view today. Thanks.
Cool. Hi, everyone who's here. I hope we get to fill up the room a little bit more, because I think it's a very, very important panel that we're having here, building bridges between the continents and like into Africa and out of Africa. It's a topic that is very, very, very close to my heart, and thank you for Africa Arena for giving this attention and for putting this panel together. Love sharing some insights, having a conversation on the topic. So my name is Michael Weiss, originally from Germany. I moved to South Africa 4 years ago, and by now I always say that I consider myself an African at heart, because I have such a strong passion for this continent, and I believe in the tremendous potential that we see here. And it's my personal mission to drive it. How do we do it, and what do we do as an organization? So I'm an entrepreneur turned angel investor, and I focus on the early stage space. So really supporting, accessing that first checks, the first rounds of funding where we jump in, and at the same time topping that up with our co-investment network from other business angels and entrepreneurs from Europe, and together we drive capital into early stage companies here in Africa, and also support accessing the European and international markets. So really glad to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I'm the director of the UK South Africa Tech Hub, and like Tracy, I also work for the UK government. And with the Tech Hub, we look at how do we support the tech ecosystem in South Africa, and we do that by supporting policy, by connecting and convening the ecosystem, and by supporting with programs that really build and grow South African businesses.
Good afternoon. Anthony, thank you for convening us. I've been looking forward to meet you and the panel. Afternoon to our audience. My name is Malise Ndlovu. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for Commercialization at the Technology Innovation Agency. That TIA is an agency of the state, the Republic of South Africa, nested under the Department of Science and Innovation. We were formulated with an Act of Parliament to support the development and commercialization of innovations, or rather intellectual property, all over the country. And my role in the agency is to support the commercialization of public funded IP and to support the conversion of that IP into market products, opportunities, and strategic interventions when necessary that we deem that we should be able to funnel them back to the state for commercial gains and social challenges that we can address with the same innovation that are homegrown. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. A lot going on there, a lot to unpack. Before I kind of get into my questions, I want everybody in the room to have a think as we are saying, and specifically what their organizations do, and think how they might be useful to you, or you might be able to support them. So then when we walk away from this conversation, there's an opportunity to engage with them, but also as well to think about the questions you might want to ask them. Because I've got a couple of questions, but I really want to hear from you guys, what are the things you want to hear from our panel around this topic, around building bridges? So please do think about the questions you might have, as I will come to you guys later on. Where I want to start is, as many of you know, I run a network called the London Africa Network, which is supporting various people across the tech ecosystem between the UK and Africa coming together. And that wasn't a plug for the network. I actually have a point. And my point is, we've just open called to have new members join the community. And we've had nearly 300 people express interest in joining the community, of which, going through the data, over 35% of those people are currently not doing anything directly within the African context. They're actually interested in looking at doing something, which is amazing to see that appetite to do more work. But the question I'm having for these people is, what is their motivation? Why are they doing it? Is it through their organization themselves? So I know you've all introduced what you do, but I'd love to understand actually very quickly, what is the actual motivation behind what your organization is doing? Not what it's doing, but what is the motivation? Why are you, if you're coming from the UK, doing this work in Africa? Why South Korea? And why is here setting up all these initiatives and organizations? So kind of a quick insight to why. I want to hear it from everybody, or certainly representation from each group. What's the motivation behind your organization and why you're ultimately here today?
As I mentioned, we are working to encourage exchange cooperation between Africa and the Korea. So we have been operating the several programs like the supporting small, medium-sized company support program, including startups. And at the same time, we are holding the cultural event in Korea. And at the same time, we are doing a research about the important issues of Africa. But, okay, if I say why the South Korea has interest in African market, and why do we have the programs related with the startup, the exchange programs? As I mentioned, the Korea Africa Foundation was established in 2018, 4 years old baby organization. When we started when we established the foundation, we thought about how and what programs we need to set up. At that time, when you go back to 2018, we discovered that the 70% of population in African continent are under 30 years old. We thought that the very young continent. So it means that as time goes in the future, the exchange cooperation between Korean and African youth will be very important, we thought, and including startups. So I set up the programs about the startup, the exchange, and I set up the programs about the Korea-Africa Youth Forum. So in terms of the Korea-Africa Youth Forum, we are talking about the entrepreneurship, and we have been making a space to exchange between Korean and African youth who are studying in Korea. So I think the youth exchange and startup exchange is really, really important, so this is why.
Fantastic, one to kick us off. Now, Tracy, Catherine, I know you come from effectively the same place, but different areas of the kind of startup ecosystem value chain. So I don't know if you both want to say something or one of you want to say something, but really, yeah, what is the UK government's reason for doing the amazing things you're doing?
I'll go first just because I'm 1/3 and Catherine's 1/3, and actually the other third is a gentleman called Ross Strike who actually has the checkbook, so that's who you really want to talk to. But the main reason why I'm here as DIT is because you're probably not going to expect this, but it's all about the money. The UK, like everywhere else, wants to make money. But the way in which we're doing it is not just in an extractive mindset. So I think the first thing is we've built our own successful FPS, tech, fintech ecosystem. We've actually got some good methodology and framework, and we actually know how to export that. The other thing is we're an incredibly efficient market to raise money. And at the same time, touching on my former speaker's comments, we know where the growth opportunities lie. But we're also cognizant that there's a lot of challenge around that, and that's probably maybe an opportunity to segue to Catherine, if you don't mind, where she can talk a little bit about the second contribution as part of the three.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really interesting question, and I think when we look at what the UK is doing in South Africa, it is exactly what Tracy said. The better South Africa, the better the trading partner. And we fall under the economic growth team, and our mandate is to help South Africa with prosperity and ultimately reduce unemployment. And I think there's a historical legacy there that makes the work that we do really important.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. We'll come back to you, Michael.
Cool. Yeah, for me, that motivation really is quite personal, and that's twofold. So, first and foremost, my first exposure to emerging markets was about 10 years ago, when just after high school, I left my home country, Germany, and lived in a township in South America for a year, where we were building music schools and raising funds to play concerts. And there I could see the potential when you have a lot of problems to solve, but you get passionate people and ideas behind that. And then secondly, I, from that, ventured out into entrepreneurship. And till this day, the best moment of my life as an entrepreneur was getting that first check and support of an angel investor who said, Michiel, I believe in your idea. I'm going to support you with my time, knowledge, and money. And then I came to Africa. We were building a company here, and one of the gentlemen who was involved in building the company is actually sitting here in the first row, Alex Baish. And he was yet another gentleman who said, I believe in early stage entrepreneurs. I believe in ideas in my home country, South Africa, and I'm supporting them with funding and with my knowledge and guidance. And so my motivation really lies in fixing or bridging this early stage funding gap, which I think we have on the African continent. There's so many amazing ideas and entrepreneurs who do not get that first support by angel investors and funding. And I think it's really, really important to drive and support that in order to create a proper value chain of incredible startups that eventually can become unicorns. And now I'm just incredibly grateful to be in a position where my circle kind of closes from having received the first check back in the day. Now I can write the first check, and that's my mission to do so, and that's what I'm here for.
I love it, and I also love, I can tell the energy as you talk about the excitement you have. So we've heard from international governments and their initiatives. We've got somebody who's come from that founder journey themselves, support entrepreneurs. But we've got someone here who is on the ground, who is representing the country we're in. So what is the motivation for you guys, and what are you trying to achieve?
Anthony, it is a mammoth task. I do not want to lie. So the entity having been formulated by a thought and all those processes that has to happen in Parliament was not an easy decision to make, but a necessary one. So this entity was created to bridge the innovation chasm that we had a challenge in the country. Remember, there is inputs and investments that are made into the R&D space, then there are outputs out of that. However, the outputs out of that intellectual property may not see the light of day, given the many challenges that are on the ground. So that is the one part of the motivation. And the secondary part would be around then creating some sort of a bridge and an entity that can have a bit of reasonable capital to be able to play on the early stage side of investing into this intellectual property, but also translate that intellectual property into market opportunities. And the third fold is that we are creating a knowledge economy. We are taking our intellectual property, we're diffusing it, we're exporting it for commercial gain. We need to create a new income stream for this country through IP outputs, services and products and derivative products that we can get out of all these innovation investments that we do. So we're trying to make sure that we can be an active player. Actually, we're not trying, we are doing. We have been around for, I think, a little over 12 years. So right now, I'm sitting here with full confidence that we are doing, and we will bolster up and strengthen our capability to be able to take these early technologies that we are funding and to convert these startups into highly sustainable and very competitive players in both regional stances where we can make sure that they can export to Africa, but only as well.
Fantastic. And I think why I asked about that motivation question, you want to really understand, in building these ecosystems, these bridges, what is that underlying reason beyond the activity? Because once you really understand what the other people are doing, you can get very quickly to find the solutions, make them to the opportunities. So thank you for the spectrum we had there, you know. And I think no matter what that motivation is, right, it's the vehicles that we're going to be creating to bridge those gaps are always going to be where we convene and connect with people. So even if we've got a slightly different motivation, if we're still driving the same outcomes, supporting entrepreneurs, bringing investment into those businesses, it still allows us to achieve the same things, but it's important to know what we're coming to the table for as well so we can best serve that. So what then for you guys at the moment is the most critical thing that you think needs to happen when we're building these bridges? So what is the main current focus for you guys, and kind of what is the main vehicle that you're using to achieve those goals? So I'll start with Tracy and Catherine, so you from the UK side, but what is the current key focus for you, the key activity that you're doing, and how are you doing that?
Thanks. So we do that through the programs that we run, and we use people to make those to build those bridges. So our African Angel Academy program, and I think Ayanda from Viridian is here. So if you want to learn more about it, yes, there she is. If you want to learn more about the African Angel Academy, please speak to Ayanda. We train angel investors and connect angel investors to startups, and one of our cohorts are angel investors from the UK. So that is one of our funding programs. Another one is yet to be launched, but connecting UK funders to South African founders. And so that's using people and our networks to bring those closer together. And another one of our programs is taking South African entrepreneurs to the UK for market access opportunities. So our vehicle is programmatic support to the ecosystem and to build the bridges through those partnerships.
And before we come to Tracy, I'm guessing from a TSL, you do similar things as well, right, on the ground?
Yes, that and much more. I'll try and give part one as a holistic approach, and then the other one where my pragmatic skill set is being applied on a day-to-day basis. So we have several interventions as a aid entity. We are an active funder of innovation, early stage, of course. And we are a connector, which is more or less around being a bridge of some sort, and also making those requisite partnerships with other ecosystem players to be able to support our investees much better, with much more muscle, and reach a higher footprint that we could do if we were just going at it alone. And we are an enabler because we still have the job of making sure that we unearth all those rough diamonds, and then we bring them up to a level where they can be somewhat visible and have a chance to be able to demonstrate and validate what is it that they want to do. Is there any merit and prospects to doing that, or how can we support them to even improve along the process? And lastly, it would be around making sure that as an active player in the ecosystem, we take what we know and we foster a culture of innovation in the country so that we can have more and more young people knowing and understanding what it takes to be somebody that can actually make money out of the innovation ecosystem and be a player. So that's where we rope in as many services and support programs that we have to drive that. Because if we don't do end-to-end, at some point we might have more of a black hole than more successes. And my direct role at the agency, it's sitting at the crux where I am tasked with looking at converting the DNA of what would look like a technology investment in the investment book. But now you have to convert that, and you have to convert the entrepreneur into now a tech enterprise. And it takes a different type of perspective and knowledge and skill set, and to be able to show them that now you're not just somebody's investee, you're not being, nobody's holding your hand anymore and dispersing. The tech must now feed you. And this is what it takes for you to become an entrepreneur that can actually now go out there in the market and get that first check, and also engage with our colleagues to get market access abroad, and to get technology transfer capabilities abroad, and to also make sure that we can open you up to what are the complexities of transferring IP out of this country, and what are the complexities of lending in another country, what are the cultural diversity issues, what are the political issues, and what is the market looking like for the products and services that you want to sell at home and abroad.
Brilliant, fantastic. Covered a lot of bases there. You are very, very busy. So Tracy, kind of coming to where you're at within the government, above what Catherine's doing, that other stream, the 3/3 you'd cover there. What is it where your focus is?
Thanks, Anthony. I'll be brief. So first of all, I have a Pan-African focus, and as great a work as Catherine is doing in South Africa, we've obviously got 2 other hubs, being Nigeria. Nankling Danfalani is around, so reach out to her. And thanks to Kenya Airways, unfortunately, our Kenyan representative couldn't make it, but we also cover Kenya as well. But how I'm basically working is really through private sector, and I'm actually going to call out somebody who's a great advocate, and that organization will come through because they themselves are a massive disruptor. So we've got Tom Attenborough from the LSEG, which most of you think of the London Stock Exchange as just an exchange, but actually we think of them as a whole a value chain supplier of services. And it's working through them because ultimately the thing you all have in common and you've all been speaking about is raising money. So Tom, if you can just give us a wave so everybody knows you. That's the person who's, no matter how early you are in your journey, take note of Tom, because they are rapidly evolving and it's a really key component of what we do.
Perfect, thank you, Tracy. And hello, Tom, good to see you. Michael.
Yeah, maybe just a quick addition, because you can obviously see there's an overlap of all panelists within our activities. So part 1 of what we do, of course, is supplying funding for early stage entrepreneurs, but also guiding these entrepreneurs on their fundraising journey, and as well as startup building journey early on, in particular with the access to European capital. But also what we do and focus on is, and I think this is so important for Africa, and we had quite a few conversations during the last couple of days in various panels and conferences and all around here in Cape Town. It is really also changing, or not necessarily changing, but promoting the African narrative towards other countries. Because I feel, when I speak to my fellow Europeans, that Africa is completely misunderstood for what it is. Most of the people that I have in my friend and business network, they wouldn't expect that we have such a beautiful conference here in Africa. So the perception of Africa is really, I think, misconstructed. It's not necessarily about the potential. It's all about, more on the poverty side, on the problem side, but not on the potential side. And you were saying earlier, Tracy, for most of them, it's not about making money or there's business opportunities. It's more about like helping Africa. And I really, really disagree with that narrative, because I feel like Africa doesn't need help. There's so much potential here. It's also for other countries to understand we're here to make business eye to eye level. And this is really what we're trying to promote and show, is that there's tremendous opportunities at eye level. We can make business together, and not because one is helping the other, it's because we are forming partnerships. And also lastly, it's really about, I'm really committed to also creating and supporting trust. And this is something that I would love to address on this panel as well. I think trust is so important, especially in the investment environment and in the building business environment. And this is where we really also try to step in and build a bridge of trust. Because when we're doing investments, what I hear from our co-investors is, Michiel, just tell me what you guys are doing. I'm happy to jump in. So obviously there's this level of trust that we were able to create. And I think as panelists, as ecosystem supporters and activists and corporates, if we all come together and showcase the potential, we can build a tremendous bridge of trust that will help, I think, for better foreign interest and activities when it comes to investments.
I like that. I'm trying to visualize what this bridge is that we're trying to build, and now trust is the first brick in it, and I'm going to add a couple more bricks to it as we go. But before I do, John, do you want to talk a little bit about what is that key driver for you guys at the moment?
I really fully agree with your opinion. Africa doesn't need help from others, I think. Before starting my work in my foundation, I also thought like this. Africa is one country. And if I say something about Africa to my colleague or my friends, everyone say that. How do you help them? How your foundation help the Africa? So I said, I said no. Before my first journey to Ghana and Senegal, it was 2018. I went there to do research about the African startup ecosystem. Before then, I thought that, okay, we will teach something to them. It was natural at the time, but after my first journey, I became to know that it was wrong things, totally. And then I had journeys to Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, and South Africa. I traveled many the countries, and I learned from their experience about the active ecosystem, and they have really systemical programs. So now, while making the startup exchange program between Korea and Africa, I'm concentrating on the area, the region, the eastern and the western and southern and northern part, because my foundation is really too small. We have just 30 steps, so we cannot touch all the areas because Africa is more than 50 countries. So we are focusing on the area, one country, each region. Firstly, we need to start from there. So eastern part, we are focusing on the Kenya, and western part of Ghana and Senegal, Nigeria, and northern part, Egypt, and southern part is South Africa. And then as time goes, we will expand the activities to other countries, but now they are the key areas we are concentrating on.
Fantastic. So kind of distilling down what I'm hearing there, or kind of my perception of what does it mean to build bridges within the ecosystem. I think that first bit there was kind of demystifying what it is to talk about and look at Africa, or countries that make up Africa. Creating actually just awareness and understanding of who's operating, doing different things, who are the stakeholders. And that became that trust piece, right? Trusting in your entities that you work with. We understand those motivations for why they're doing it, how we collaborate. But really it's building bridges is being those market makers, right? Creating the environments in which business can be done and people can collaborate. And all of you here seem to be those market makers in different respective areas, whether that's working together directly or not. So that, for me, probably is how I'm defining building bridges. And of course, there's several hundred things you do under that in the detail of it. We will come to questions from the audience. One thing I kind of want to know from you guys, this might be a discussion point. I hate saying what's the biggest challenge or what's the biggest opportunity. So I guess what I want to say is actually, if there is a challenge, what is it in the sense that it's actually the opportunity we should be going for? So where do you see the next 5 years as we continue to build bridges, bigger events like this, more people coming into the continent, it's different countries? Where do you see the biggest challenge that you will be working on to solve, but it's actually the biggest opportunity? So is anybody, I'll actually go straight to, we're here in South Africa hosting for you, what's the biggest challenge opportunity that you see over the next 5 years?
Well, there's always an opportunity out of every challenge. So for the country, we need to address unemployment. We need to create more jobs. More jobs comes out of new industries that needs to emerge, legacy industries that needs to be transformed so that they can have, improved efficiencies, productivity, and competitiveness. So we're not killing any sector here. Those that are crippling or maybe shrinking, we want to transform them. We're living in the fourth industrial revolution, so it's easy to transform and help them make more money so that they can stay in business and then pay the fiscus back.
Perfect.
And
I'm going to
also-
hold you on that because I know what's going to happen as well.
Okay.
The curse of somebody going last means you then, all the good answers are created. And I know
Yeah.
employment and opportunity in business is kind of the underlying thing that all of us are trying to work on and solve. But I'm also conscious as well as time, I want to hear from everybody and then we're going to split out. So Tracy, well actually, you know what? You can jump in, Catherine,
I'm
Tracy,
gonna
wherever
jump
you
in
wherever
just
you want to
because-
go so that you get your answer in. So you're not the last one, but Tracy, you've jumped in.
Yeah,
Catherine.
I think I'm just going to so I talk to the City of London daily. So I have lived and pounded those pavements a lot. I can tell you the hardest job I have is selling the African narrative. We may buy into it, we may be here, we may believe in it, but our story is not transported across in the same positive, potential-oriented way that we believe it can. And the second reason I think we need to work on it is we need to build our data. We need to show return data, we need to show growth data, and we need to show this real potential that we talk about amongst ourselves. Thanks, Anthony.
Perfect.
And to add just a real practical element is policy. So things that mean that the bridge cannot be joined in the middle is policy. So South Africa doesn't have enough of an enabling policy environment for startups at the moment, and things are in place that prohibit investment into South Africa because it's too expensive, the returns aren't great enough. And we're looking at what are the shifts that we can make in things like exchange controls, in tax, to build the bridge, particularly with funding between international investors and South Africa.
Fantastic. John Hill, from your perspective?
Yeah, if I think about the challenges that we had in 5 years, I want to say like this, okay, connecting everything. It means that from my experience, we are operating the startup support programs. So I met the Korean startups and then the VCs and accelerators, and then also at the same time I met the applicant side, the experts, but they are staying separately. So I want to connect them first. And in case of the foundations program, there are some programs related with the youth exchange and the startup exchange. For example, we have a Korea Africa Youth Forum. So we are talking about the entrepreneurship. And we have the startup programs for the early stage. And we also have one more startup programs for the startups who are past the early stage. So I want to connect these programs at the same time, because after joining the Korea Africa Youth Forum, and then they can get the entrepreneurship mind, and then they have some great ideas as the early stage startups, and then as time goes, if they grow up, they can join the next stage, the startup support program. I want to connect them. So through this, I can make these programs really, really successful. So I think like this.
Okay, thank you. And finally, okay,
And now I'm the last.
good luck.
No, but I've got something. Of course, apart from what my colleagues have said earlier, we have the issue around like liquidity and traction that put us seriously on the map in comparison to the rest of the world. But one topic that is continuously overlooked, I'm glad that I was almost overlooking it myself, so I'm very glad that it came into my mind, is gender inclusivity and diversity as a big challenge. 1.5%, even less, of startups funded on the continent are female-led or have female teams. And we've been speaking about it over the last couple of days. So this is the massive challenge. This needs to change. We need to solve it. So that is a challenge, but also it is an opportunity. If we compare us to the rest of the world, it's not much better. It's still far below 10%. And we've been talking about it during the last couple of days. As a continent and as individual countries, funders, we have an opportunity to set ourselves apart and make a statement by supporting female-led businesses and foster diversity and inclusion. And that will also then, I think, change the narrative and drive a complete different attention. But it's a massive, massive challenge, and we need to foster and support funders, companies, organizations, corporates, all of us, and put the attention and drive inclusivity. And that can, because if we don't do that, there's so much potential in diversity, and you leave so much opportunity off the table just because you don't have diverse teams, you don't have that access to knowledge and a different way of thinking, and we need to seriously address that.
Fantastic. So, hearing all of that from you guys, we just defined, or I defined, what building bridges is. We've now kind of figured out what we need to be getting across those bridges, right? So just kind of going back through there, we've talked about employability, right? Creating opportunities for people and actually kind of jumping between this to make it narrative. The gender diversity and inclusion piece is a massive part of that, right? Making a more inclusive, open place to do business, opportunities for people. And the way in which we're going to go and do that is we need to connect the stakeholders, map the ecosystem, that awareness piece, and understand who is who. And then we need to collect that data, build that narrative that we can go out there and sell this to the world and to other people within the ecosystem. And a big part of that will then drive policy and change at the government level, which can create far larger change, which obviously can often be that blocker. So I've got a Twitter thread that's going to come on after this. I'm going to create a thread about this. I've got those points. So thank you for those different contributions. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I do have plenty more questions, but I'm really keen to hear if anybody's got questions in the audience they would like to ask. A hand has gone straight up in the front, so...
Can we just ask that if you do have a question, if you can please stand up so that everyone can see you.
Hi, Alex Bosch, Managing Director of Xeon South Africa Pty Limited. So I think, I like the panel and I like the discussion, but I think we need to include in this bridge building and connection. Often founders are young tech startups, particularly Kenya, Nairobi, Cape Town, Ghana, Nigeria. They get early stage investment, which clearly goes through some sort of credit risk or risk profile in terms of who the funders dish money out to. But those businesses are not necessarily driven to success because young entrepreneurs who don't necessarily have the street smarts to build their business and understand business acumen because they come from a highly technical background or innovative coding background. What do you guys do in terms of supporting young startups with those kind of skill sets to make their businesses a success as they scale them?
And I think we'll go for one or two people to answer this, just so we make sure we get around the questions, and we'll keep the answers concise. But what's going on, we'll talk about from maybe the UK Gov perspective and the South African Gov perspective. What are TIA doing around that?
Thank you so much for the question. What you've mentioned is exactly what happens at where I'm sitting in commercialization support. So you do have early tech that is now transforming into a startup, and one of the biggest gaps would be around also even investor readiness, because you don't want to leave someone halfway, window level. You want to make sure that by the time the business converts the technology into market opportunities or maybe early stage validations, they also need to be aware of the gaps Should it be maybe a change in leadership or maybe an empowerment of enterprise support that has to come in to enable them to then understand the business requirements and the regulatory requirements of what it takes for them to take that technology that we've de-risked, and now we're playing the connector role on capital funders. When they come in, they find a fertile ground for them to co-invest with us, and we'll then be able to exit at the time when they grow. So the skill set of founders, especially those one-man shows, it's something that we track right in the middle of technology development, way before we let them go, maybe a year or a year and a half before they get to market-facing trajectory.
Brilliant. And Catherine?
Yeah, we run a range of programs from our Future Females Business School that really takes idea stage businesses and helps them scale and grow, follow on to a funding readiness program that tacks onto that. We have programs where we provide how do you access alternative finance models, how do you look at your business with a different eye, and we have also a capacity building program, again with Viridian, that looks at how do you capacity build the tech hubs in South Africa so that they can deliver the right kind of content to the right kind of entrepreneur.
Brilliant. Thank you for the question. Have we had any other questions? I saw another hand was up. Hello. Just introduce yourself, your organization, and ask a question.
Hi, my name is Lebu, so I'm part of the Africa Arena team. So for me, this bridging gap has been sort of like a hot topic for the past, I think, 4 days, if I'm not mistaken. And looking at the panel, I think there's 4 of you who have lived abroad, right, who've had access to different markets, right? So my question is that how do we realistically build the bridge? How does Africa, including South Africa, of course, package themselves to the rest of the world so that they can see the potential? Like the guy mentioned earlier, is that we don't need the assistance. There's so much opportunities here. But for me, I'm asking the 4 of you, since you've had exposure to the markets outside Africa, what practical solutions or steps should we take to package ourselves so that we can show the rest of the world that we are capable and we can actually be equals?
Well, maybe I'll go to Tracy on this one, because you talked about that narrative and packaging that data, and you're obviously going out there selling the opportunities and connecting the dots around that. So what's your take on maybe expanding upon that initial point you made?
So I have lived abroad, but I think I define myself as a South African first and foremost. So I really believe I have a foot in both camps. But the thing I would actually say is, and it's not a pure plug for the UK government, but at the same time, take what is out there, use it and adapt it and make it your own. So if I do give you something quite specific, we have a champion, Lord Khalifa, who's come up with a Khalifa review. And if you actually look at that document, you'll see that the UK has set out a very clear, simple, I say simple, not all of it's been straightforward, but there is a very clear plan of how the UK has empowered its own home market and actually how it plans to internationalize and export what it's done successfully. So I personally, and this is my real motivation on a very personal level, is to get African engagement around how we can take that framework and that narrative and make it appropriate and work with African governments so that they can have their own version that's fit for purpose. So I'd encourage you, it's very easy, Google it, Khalifa Review, stop by our stand. There's also a great manual on how we work. So there's a lot of resource out there. Reach out to us, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on to that?
Maybe it's tapping into the resource that is interest into Africa and capturing that and saying, how do we educate and create the right kind of awareness? I think there's also another way to look at it with the African diaspora, because if we do that way around and the connection's already made, the bridge is already built, but how do we capacity build the diaspora who are wanting to invest back into their home countries, and capacity banding and packaging around their engagements in the networks in international context?
Excellent. And hopefully that gave you a bit of insight. And also there's a lot of data that's now publicly available. You've had Dario from Bryda, Maxime from Africa Big Deal. They've spoken the last couple of days. There's also an opportunity for you as individuals to collect that data and put it out in the ways that best serve you and what you're doing as well. We're all market makers in this room. That's the reason we're here. So it's an opportunity for you to be doing the same. But thank you again for the question. Do we have any other questions? Yes, got one at the back.
Thank you for the panel. My name is Meralda. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Melio AI. Thank you for kind of saying the female-led tech founder struggles, but my question is actually around deep tech. How does the panel view deep tech in Africa? Because we see there's fintech, there's agri-tech, but deep tech realistically needs a slightly different funding profile. It takes a little bit longer to develop, and it takes very specialized skills. The reason why I'm asking is actually most of the engineers that has the profile that we want to hire are either immigrated, has immigrated, or is currently immigrating. And that's really because the deep tech startups in South Africa are either choked by without cash, or are actually also the founders have immigrated because there's more access to markets elsewhere. And the advice that we get is actually just offshore everything, including the founders. So how does the panel view bridging the gap and actually bringing a lot of that innovation back?
I'm going to pick on you, Michael.
Looking at me.
Looking at you with your founder hat, investor hat.
So on deep tech, I think deep tech has I'm not too sure about the let's say the US market, but even looking at the European or the German market, which is my home country, it's a challenge even there to fund deep tech startups. And I know, for example, just recently in this year, the German ministry has launched a deep tech accelerator in North Rhine-Westphalia because they have identified that they have an own gap when it comes to, quantum computing or other like deep tech topics. Then looking at Africa, and I mean let's use South Africa as an example. So you have the regulatory challenges. There's very, very, very little deep tech funding activity in the country. And unfortunately, I would probably suggest the same approach when it comes to position yourselves offshore for now. And I think this is where the opportunity is, and is position yourselves offshore, but conduct your operations locally, create the jobs locally. And I think there's tremendous talent locally when it comes to engineering and deep tech. And I think you can spin a great story when it comes to African deep tech or like African operated deep tech, and you can access funding from overseas because you will actually have great leverage when it comes to valuations that you're able to raise overseas, and the cost of talent locally in that space might be actually to your advantage. But it is a tough one.
Fantastic. So I want to expand upon this, and I know the rest of the panel have thoughts on it, but like an overly long Oscar acceptance speech, we're about to get played off because we're coming to the end of our session. So I'm just going to conclude with a couple remarks. Firstly, say thank you so much to all of our panelists. I'm going to do 3 quick fire questions. I just need 1-word answers from you on each of those questions because we also do have to come off. And we'll go from left to right. So first question, 1 word. Which sector or industry are you most excited about?
That's a tough one. I'm highly trained in ICT, so it comes to mind by default. However, personally, I want to drive energy.
Energy, okay. Energy.
Green.
Green.
Agriculture.
Medtech, health tech.
Energy.
Energy, okay, we've got some other ones. Question number 2. If after this, who are you looking to engage with? One stakeholder group, investors, founders. Who are you most likely want to engage with after this conversation?
Everybody is my stakeholder.
Okay.
I serve everybody in the country, and I export South African IP to the world.
Okay, thank you.
It's 3 words, but it's one answer. Entrepreneur support organizations.
Fantastic. Here we go.
2 words. International, or 3 actually. International business angels.
2 as well, investors and startups looking to raise capital abroad.
Every international stakeholders.
Everybody is basically. Kind of final question. At the after party tonight, what's the first drink you're going to have? Mine's going to be a beer.
Long Island.
Long Island.
Wine.
I don't drink, so appetizer, which is a great produce.
Okay, I'll have a double vodka on your behalf and soda.
No worries.
Fantastic. And that means you now know what you can get them tonight afterwards, you know, their drinks. But thank you again to our panel. Thank you again for listening. And thank you to Africa Arena for putting on a fantastic session. Thank you, everybody.